This is Apotheosis, the official podcast of the Production Designers Collective. I'm your host, Alexander Whittenberg. Today, we'll be joined by Academy Award-winning production designer Nathan Crowley. Nathan's credits include Interstellar, The Prestige, Dunkirk, Wonka, and the Wicked films. The conversation you'll hear today is made up of two separate recordings. The first is from April of 2024, and the second part was recorded earlier this month, just a couple days before Nathan traveled to London for the premiere of Wicked for Good. We chat about his unusual path to Hollywood, cracking the code of Christopher Nolan's screenplays, and the pleasures of practical filmmaking, which are on full display throughout his entire filmography, but especially in the Wicked films, where he famously planted 9 million tulips. Of course, we started our conversation, as I always do, by asking Nathan, what does creativity mean to you?
Jesus.
Is it too early in the morning?
How do you find creativity? That's a lofty, big question.
Yeah.
I guess it's a freedom of thought, I think is you have to sort of free yourself of for me personally, it's like I think it's a freedom of letting my mind wonder, and if I can, it's a search of God. That's a difficult question. How do you find creativity? It's being free to let your mind think differently, without all the baggage that is sort of either you acquire during your life and career. So I think in film, creativity is about it's about being able to see something in a different way and to think differently, and to be brave because no one's going to agree with you. maybe the director does.
Creativity is about creating trust, I guess, right?
Well, also you often it's not just your head; it's your sort of what I call your gut, it's your instincts. And it's like, what are your instincts? Creativity crosses crosses all walks of life, and it's just a thought. They call it, for me, it's like the way of thinking, but it's also your mind is your gut is part of that for me. It's like you can feel something, like you haven't pushed something or you need to, it's like, no, that's not good enough. You need to push. And I think I've only really, takes a long time to understand, to trust yourself to go there.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's easier as you get older because when you're an older person, designer sitting at a table with an English accent, people seem to trust you more. When I was younger, they were saying, "Who's that kid in the room?" So it's a sort of it just changes. But getting older is helpful with it. I think I'm more creative now than I've ever been. Because I'm a little bit free of things. So
yeah, well, and I'm sure you'll continue on that path of becoming freer and freer, right, with more experiences.
Yeah, until you fall off a cliff.
You fall.
A lot of designers, you go too free, you're out.
I'm going to say three things, and I want you to link how these kind of led you into the next stage of your life career. Those three things are Maggie Thatcher, sports cars, and a Universal Studio backlot burning down.
Well, all three have big relevances. So as you've probably done your research, I came out of college, art school, in 1988. which was about a year, I think, just before Black Monday, where the economy dived horribly. And I came out of college and was really not a great any direction. Not knowing what I wanted to do. And I got a job drafting for architects because I could draft, which was extremely dull. Just drafting business architecture, the cafeterias in these, it was the 80s. There were people making money left, right, and center and building terrible architecture. And it was the start of the yuppie, and it was all about money, and manufacture and the Tories, had really sold off all the natural resources. They sold off British Rail, they sold off gas and electricity, all the national interests. My brother, who's a proper Tory politician, would defend what they were doing, and they said they had to change out of the 70s, which is true. But I still feel we're suffering, or England. I mean, I live in America now, but so there was a big sort of money grab in a way, and there was a sort of people didn't seem to care much for each other. It was all about me. So I remember Tony Benn, the leftist politician, was sort of being slammed, and the newspapers. This is the start of the newspapers picking on people and sort of taking them apart for no good reason. So, it was happening in America too. But so anyway, it came when I decided I couldn't draft for architects. It wasn't what I wanted to do. That's when Black Monday hit, and there was no work. And I bought an apartment and got on a mortgage, like you do. Like we saw it in 2008, and it was like, well, interest rates double. I couldn't earn enough money to pay for it, so I put the keys in the envelope, sent them to the mortgage company, and I had friends in Los Angeles, so I went to LA. But I did it. I actually went there with a little bit of money. Sending the keys back was later, but I actually decided that I was going to, with a friend, we were going to go to, this is actually before Black Monday, actually. I need to rewind a little bit. We decided he was a draftsman too, as I asked for with him, he could only get job drafting with architects. So we thought, let's go and buy sports cars from California, drive them across the States, ship them and sell them for a little bit of profit in England because they were rust-free in California. So we did that for about a year. We'd go to LA, drive to Jacksonville, Florida, down the 10, and ship them out and make a bit of money on the docks in Southampton in England. And then I went back to LA to buy some more. He stayed in England. And then that's when Black Monday hit, and I couldn't afford it, and we couldn't sell. There's no secondhand sports car market. So I ended up really broke. I remember to this day still sitting above LA. My apartment was like, okay, I just have to, I can't pay a mortgage. I just have to give that back. I remember thinking, I got $100. In fairness, my partner at the time, she had family in LA, so we had a bit of support. But it was like, I need to earn some money. And so, so all that was like, and that's really what led me to LA. And then, I couldn't go back. England was done because there was nothing there for me. And then I bumped into a guy I was at art college with in Brighton, outside Paramount. It was a bar called Smalls opposite Paramount. He was working on Star Trek there. The Next Generation, perhaps. He was working there, and he said, "Yeah, no, I'm drafting." I had no idea you get a job drafting in the film industry.
Right.
And he says, "Well, I just got this job on Hook, and they need people." And I said, "Why?" And they because the unions were full of people. I wasn't union he said the Universal law put it down, and they hired all the set designers from the unions, and there's a window you can get in. You just have to go and interview. So, and so he got me an interview with Norman Garwood, the designer who did Brazil and stuff like that. And Prett was the art director, and Tom Sanders was the art director, who I later worked for when he became a designer. So then, yeah, I got that job thanks to Joe Hodges and Norman Garwood, and thanks to the Universal lot burning down, which meant they would let people into the union. The PM, it was a bit of sort of fortune. I didn't burn down the Universal backlog.
We have it on record here.
So it was good fortune. And then I got a job on Hook drafting. I had to do the oversized furniture for Tinkerbell, and I sat in a room and drafted big stuff. Was
it a pretty easy jump from the architectural drafting world to the film drafting world? Was there a pretty easy correlation there?
Well, yeah, so you had to use a pencil rather than ink, which was lovely because you could erase it. And I learned in metrics. I had to relearn Imperial very quickly.
Right.
Which was, especially if you're doing oversized scale furniture, was like, I really need to learn Imperial scales, and, but everyone's quite hard. I mean, I got into the union as like a junior B draftsman, which was probably the lowest of the lowest. So, I guess, everyone was willing to help. There was a lot of, older draftspeople who were that were drafting for life. That was the job back then. There were separate unions from the art directors. And so that you'd be a set designer and that was your thing. And you'd be on, you'd be on the row of set design. So the seniors would help us a bit. So it was good. I mean, I found myself drafting and it was like, I don't want to draft. So,
yeah. Did you instantly realize that film was a place you wanted to explore more?
Yeah, I mean, I still remember it walking. It was at Sony, but back then it was TriStar Columbia, and obviously it's MGM before that. Walking in the Overland Gate for the first time for my interview, and walking by, it must have been stage 30 or set 27, and there was a flood of water across the street. It was just pouring out of the stage. I looked into the stage, and there was a ship the size of, it was Hook's ship. It was the size of HMX Victory. And they would say, oh yeah, water tanks, they always leak, and they didn't seem to care much. And it was crazy. It was like, this is fantastic. And there were painters trying to paint a skull at the back. And it's like, it was truly magical. And so the minute I got into film, I knew I found my place. I finally found a place that okay, this is where I belong. And I got lucky, stumbled in. Norman Garwood helped me. My friend Joe helped me. And then, the Universal backlog burned down. And I still, the other thing I remember is they said, go make your deal with the PM. And I remember him as this sort of, it was very typical Hollywood. I was like 23 or something. I went in and goes, oh, you're the new guy. We're going to get you in the union, but, I'm not paying you. Don't even begin to ask for anything above scale. I had no idea what scale was. He says, I'm not going to pay more, and don't even open your mouth. This is what you get. I'm getting in the union. You should be grateful. It's like, yeah, I really am. I've no idea what scale is. He wrote it down. He goes, now get out of here. And I went back and opened the thing. It's like, this is a lot of money. So, it was like much more than drafting for architects in the UK. And I went back to my friend who was drafting. I said, I can't believe you get paid this much money for drafting. And he goes, I don't get paid that much money. I get paid more. And it was like, what do you mean?
Well, I was going to ask you about Interstellar, and in particular, I guess all of Christopher Nolan's scripts. I know you've done 8 projects together. many of them have very complex themes that I imagine when you're first reading them on the page are, perhaps a bit difficult to visualize right off the bat.
Yeah.
So, what is your experience like in sort of decoding these scripts with Christopher and finding a way to make it happen in reality and capture it on film?
Um, I think, when you read one of his scripts, they're usually big. I mean, there's a lot of, he hasn't sort of, when I come in, he's usually, still working on it, but he has the framework he likes. And there are big ideas in there and they're complicated. And, they're convoluted, they're non-linear. So reading a normal script, like say The Dark Knight, is still difficult because he's pushing the story in so many directions. So then when you get to like Dunkirk and your air sea land, it's that's like he can see in 3D. So when he's writing it, you can see where it's going. So Interstellar is like, okay, it's like when you're reading it, it's like the Tesseract.
Mm, yeah,
Built by five-dimension beings, so it's like, so what is the fifth dimension? It's like, well, so it's like this sort of, there's a lot of learning to do. And,
yeah,
and it's convoluted and, the way, even the black hole, but, there's things, how do I deal with it? There's things I ignore. So there's things I can't put in my head. There's no way, it's like any film. It's like, I'm just going to ignore that for a bit because that's too complex. It needs to just sit with me until I can come
yeah,
back. So I just park it over here. And, I'll come back to it and I'll just step in. I like to, like Interstellar, I'd step in with just by doing the Ranger. I mean, designing spaceships is, it's full of pitfalls because a lot of stuff's being done. So it was like,
yeah,
I got the Ranger, I got the Lander, I've got the Endurance. It's like there's a lot of stuff to do. And I've got robots as well. So there's all these sort of, it's tricky. That's what I mean. There was a very hard design job to get through that. But, the thing about Chris is you do it sort of together and we work in what we call the garage. Obviously, it's not a garage anymore, but it was once upon a time. It's a nice room. But it used to be cold in the winter and hot in the summer. But now it's so it's like, so you step together with it. And he's been writing this thing for, it's unclear however long. In Interstellar, I mean, I know his brother Jonah did the first draft and he took it over.
mm-hmm.
But it's complex. They're complex ideas just to get your mind around. And then Tennant was even like, it was just like, hold on a second. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm lost on page 5. I got to go back. So you end up just reading it a lot. And the joy of Chris is he's quite patient and he talks you. It's like he's pushing it into your mind slowly because he wants some help with the visuals, so he's looking for help. And so that it's great. I mean, that relationship is over those films is just fantastic. And then but again, as I was saying earlier, you can't assume that you can carry on working like that with other directors because
right.
that's not how they have their own way of working. Their crews have their own way of working. So you have to find yourself, like, okay, I've got to keep my mouth shut because I know how Chris would do it, but you guys don't want to do it like that. So you have to sort of readjust your head to help a methodology that suits the project of the people.
Something that you have always been, kind of, I guess, known for, celebrated for, is your pursuit of exploring old techniques with new technology and finding that blend. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the technologies that are available to us today and new technologies that are emerging, and how you see those technologies interacting with the future of film production.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely at a big crossroads now. I think we're like, to me, it's like the moment that silent films went sound arrived. I think we're about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always loved. I mean, it comes from the. So I remember on Braveheart, Romick, one of my illustrators, came in with Photoshop, and it was like black and white. And I remember looking at it, and I was young. I was like, whatever it was, 28, and he was out of art school. He says, "You should look at this, because the way we've done how the castle might look in the landscape is draw it out, cut it out, stick it on a photo, and then photograph it and print it big. You do it. You do like manual Photoshop." And then he showed me that. It was like, that's incredible. I got to learn that. You have to teach me that. And so, Photoshop was a big game changer. And then 3D printing came out, because I loved model making. I love models because it expresses the space. It's very useful.
Yeah.
I like miniatures, but often no one would let us build miniatures because these companies would come in and it'd be too expensive. So when 3D printing came, it was like, oh, I now can on Interstellar, I had to learn Modo, a 3D program, which was really difficult, but one of the best things. It was like learning Photoshop back then. It was like, oh my God, this thing is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the 3D printer arrived. It's like, so I can take it from my screen out there and I can carry on working and just have printing going on. I can print a whole model, an idea. And it's really and I realized it's to get through the design process, to get rid of the things that you haven't explored further enough. It's like, oh, I'm going to do a design for the Ranger and print it out. It's like, look at it. No, I can throw it away because it's not precious, So it can continue on, I can move fast. I realized that the more 3D printers I have, because they failed a lot, I'd send the same thing to 3 printers, knowing I get one out. And so you can like, at one point I think I had 17 3D printers going off my computer.
Amazing.
And it was just great because I could now I can do the rough model for all these things. And eventually you get model makers and you build them properly. But I'm trying to get to the design that we like.
Yeah.
I used to love the machine. I don't use them that much anymore, oddly. But I loved all the machines together because when they print, especially when they print circles, they do this they made this, and then they were all going around. It's like music. It's like conducting
a symphony of servos.
Yeah. No. So I was very into that for a long.
There might be something to that. You could create, like Portofino, what is it, Raymond Scott, who created all that music with computers back in the day, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe create a soundtrack of 3D printing.
Yeah, it was just because between the Megabots and the Ultimakers, they all have different sounds. So that was good. I mean, and now we have AI, which is like kind of what the 3D printers were doing for me. I can now test. I feel like AI can help me get through all the wrong answers. It can get them off. It can get me all the no's.
Yeah.
That's an idea quickly. And then I can at least get rid of like 2 weeks of not liking. But I can do that in a day, sped it up. So I think it's a very powerful program, but not to get to the answer, to get rid of all the wrong answers.
Well put.
And so that is why I like it. And I think it's another tool. Like, it's not going to solve everything. I still need my 3D printers. I still have 3 of them downstairs. I still need everything I've ever used. And I still need Photoshop. Now Photoshop has an AI, which just speeds it up. It's like, in a weird way, the good thing about Modo and the 3D program was the first time, especially if you have a 3D mouse, that I could work on something as fast as my mind was moving around it, because it was 3D. So I can jumble up and I can look at, and I can allow, because I always felt like the sketching was too slow. Like my mind had moved on.
Sure.
So what's the point of drawing it now? That's because if you think in 3D, you're pushing all these different ideas and imagining things, and then so your hands can't do it, and they just can't do it. And so 3D was brilliant for that. But the trouble with 3D is you're stuck on a 2D screen. So 3D printers were brilliant. And so AI now is like, I want to try this, I want to try that, and then if you have a good knowledge of artists and designers and styles, you can plow through stuff. I don't think I would present it ever. I just think it allows me to explore an idea. In a weird way, I use AI that we kind of come up with a bunch of stuff, stick them on the wall again, and then cut out the bits we like and stick them all together like a collage. So we've gone back to pre-Photoshop days of like, oh, I like that bit. Let's stick it with that. I like this bit. You end up like, also you could take like different ideas that you've had and drawn out and blend them. I just think it's like another thing to like use. Like how it's going to change the film industry. I mean, obviously AI is the comping and some of the digital work and it's going to change a ton of that stuff. How it's going to change it for us, I don't know. I still think I don't know if you can ever get rid of creativity and design. I just think it's another thing we use. It's like, I don't know, be more powerful than that. I mean, it could be a sea change, but I felt like 3D programs were a sea change. And when you remember, whenever it was 20 years ago, everyone was saying, "Oh, we've got to learn 3D," and yet you do have to learn 3D. Just as in the 90s, you got to learn Photoshop. And it was like, and now this, in the last decade, you better learn 3D printing. So you just need, it's another thing you need to understand and try and master. But all for good reasons. Like for me, it's like, I've got these ideas, like I'm going to sketch them out, and then I'm going to try and like use this program to help me like, get there by getting rid of all the ideas. I like all the no's. It's like it's a computer. To get to a yes, it's got to take out all the no's.
I think it's I think it's quite exciting, and the film industry, the word industry is kind of a gross word, but filmmaking as an art form is so young, right? It's only 120 years old. And so to see sort of how this art form has evolved to this very point, I mean, we're still just beginning, right? There's so much left that we can't even fathom at this point.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, but when you look back at Charlie Chaplin and the people who invented film, and you know what I mean, Buster Keaton, and it's like, these guys were doing incredibly imaginative things, knowing that it was a film.
Nathan, great to see you after so long, and since I've seen you last, you are now an Oscar winner. So congratulations to that.
Yeah, thanks very much. That was a marvelous evening.
Well, there's something about the number 7, isn't there? I've always liked that.
I guess so. Although, I guess there is, even in football or soccer, there's a big thing about number 7. I mean, it was just, it's an incredible moment to sort of finally have your name read out, which is brilliant. So,
absolutely.
There you go.
Well deserved. And I know that also since last week we spoke, Wicked has come out. It was a sensation. Wicked for Good is about to come out. I know you're off to London next week for the premiere.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited now to dive a little bit into that project and some of the specifics of that, and some of the other things like Wonka as well. And starting, I guess, with those two films both existing within this kind of musical fantasy world. Um, it's kind of a departure from what you're so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
used to, what you're known for with the Chris Nolan stuff. But I suppose in a way you kind of started in Hollywood on a big fantasy with Hook, right? So does it feel like kind of a full circle moment in some ways?
I mean, that's completely it. I started, my first film was Hook, which was really, we've talked about this. I remember thinking this is for me, the film industry is where I finally found where I belong.
Yeah.
And then I followed that with Bram Stoker's Dracula, even though it didn't get a credit. I was there for 11 months and that became my film school with second unit. So it is a full circle. And it's really, I guess for me, it's been a brilliant 2 decades with Chris Nolan, and we really got to experiment. But it was always within sort of realistic science fiction. There was never the fancy element. Was never that. So we really experimented with most genres. And in between, I'd done stuff like Westworld with So I'd sort of done a lot. And I remember thinking specifically is could I ever do fantasy, serious fantasy? I remember being on a production designers collective meeting with lots of designers, and I certainly know that a lot of people really use CGI to drive that look. And it occurred to me after 2 decades of building things practically and honing in on old techniques, like why could I actually apply that to fantasy? Could I apply that to not only fantasy, but also a musical? Now, at that time, I'd only done one musical, The Greatest Showman. And so I'd had to, it was a long learning curve because the musicals are quite different and they require a different sensibility, and the crew is different, the dancers are different. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't have normally thought about. So there's a big learning curve, but exciting because it was something new.
For sure.
And then I got offered Wonka. And so I went to London, and I hadn't worked in London that much, but I have crews I'd taken to Europe and around the world with Chris Nolan there, along with America crews. We always put crews together wherever we went, and so I had a very good crew base. So I was like, so Wonka was really this sort of great experiment of like, can we apply painted backings, cutouts, backlot builds? Can we go high enough texturally, financially? Can we actually do it in camera? Can we link interiors with exteriors so we can cross, well, I call it crossing the line of transition from one set to another, actually go fluidly through it all rather than cutting and putting green screens up and etc. Could we use arches to frame our backings? So we push the backings away, we pull the camera to that arch, but never beyond it. And if we did, we'd still put a blue screen up. And of course, there's effects in all these films. But could we develop a methodology and a language using techniques that have been used since Charlie Chaplin to at least sort of start how we wanted to make a film, or how I've always made films. So, and so it was a hard lesson, but people want that right now. So Wonka it was actually a brilliant experience. And right at the end of when we wrapped Wonka, it's a brilliant experience and it's fun. And the dancers were fantastic. And the tradition of building backlot sets, because you have dancers and you have to do it in one big take.
Mhm.
You understand why MGM, always had backlots.
For
So,
sure.
there was a language that I needed to combine with practical filmmaking, which actually was just like going back in time and just doing like they used to do with a bit more technology, So it was just the best experience. I had the best time. It kind of woke me up a bit. I realized that, I've been in this sort of rhythm for a long time of making films, and I needed it woke me up. I needed a challenge, quite a big challenge. And then we finished Wonka. I was really pleased with it, and then John Chu rang me and Mark Platt
Mhm.
saying that, hey,
You know where this is going.
yeah, he said, they were thinking of making Atlanta, but they wanted to move it to London specifically because if they went practically, my crews grow enormously, between, plasterers, painters, sculptors, scenic backing painters, prop makers, effects. If we're going to make everything mechanically, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of visual effects. They have plenty to do even with the practical set. So, and plenty of top ups. So they wanted to come to London and use the depth of the crew, and really attempt to do something, quite massive. And it's by far the biggest film I've ever made in my life. And I've made a lot of big films. So
Yeah,
I'd
that's
say it's
awesome.
like twice the size. And they were really open to it. And, but it was complicated. It was, I think it's stretched everyone I've known for 20 years and longer. To a limit, what can we actually physically do here? I don't really know where to start from that point.
Nathan, what I love about both Wonka and Wicked is, first of all, the scale of, again, what you were able to do practically, but also this kind of sense of your background in architecture and your appreciation of so many different types of architecture coming together and being sort of collaged in this really wonderful way. And it kind of is like this best of Europe, at least with Wonka, right? Like
Yeah.
this pulling these wonderful moments of architecture and creating something entirely new. And I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to, how you arrived at that idea of bringing all these styles together.
Well, I guess we should start with Wonka because it was, it was in a fictional Dahl-esque town at the best of Europe. It could have been Swiss, it could have been Belgium, it could have been France, the great chocolate makers of the world. And so it was like, okay, it could have been Prague, and it was, I remember sitting with Lee Sandels and my wife, who's my concept illustrator, Phyllis, and was saying, well, so we try mixing everything. And it was like, what do I like? I said, I like the Charles Bridge in Prague. I love the arch, and I need arches. I knew from years of practical filmmaking, if I can give myself a header to frame us in, I can then stay in the backing or in the rest of the set because I just need to get that low enough. Even if it's weirdly lower, the camera doesn't feel it. So I got to frame every view and still allow, in a way, not tell the camera or the DP that I've put these restrictions on them, but just by knowing they're there and distances and size. And we'll go back to the best of Europe. Anyway, the set became an awkward size and a very odd shape. So it would play with framing devices, and that's how I extended it. I extended it physically with backings and hard backings. But yeah, the best of years. We had the Charles Bridge from Prague. It was like, I really love, I love the Georgian crescents in London. They're beautiful. Because if we pick one city like Belgium and, Horta's architecture and, that sort of, and then the rest of Belgium is very sort of, is almost Baroque in its decoration in a Flemish way. It would have been too heavy. So we needed to put in we needed the Georgian arches, but they needed to be hand painted like a Portuguese church. And, so we started developing it all. And then the big church was based on somewhere in Italy. I forget now, but I needed the interior to go through to St. Paul's, which is enormous. So I had to figure out how I link scale wise those things. It's all physical. We built it all up to 45 feet, which is high. And there's a lot of complaining, especially from production. So,
I imagine so. And I think that takes a certain amount of creativity, as we spoke last time we talked, to actually just be in the room to get the producers and everybody else on your team of, hey, this is going to work and it's really going to make a difference, not only for the finished product of the film, but also for the filmmakers and of course the actors to exist in a space that is fully realized around them. I can only imagine how dramatically that impacts the performance as well, you know?
yeah, I mean, Wicked was sort of proof. I knew John Chu was behind me. He wanted to do it practically because we have to include the nostalgia of the past, the Wizard of Oz. So how do you include that nostalgia? We have to, if we make it, I call it handmade. If we make it traditionally, we naturally put our one foot into that camp. And if we can get enough of it, it becomes a little handmade.
Mm-hmm.
And so, around the table where we first started Wicked, there was a great sort of resistance. I really tested the water by saying, I'm going to grow. I didn't tell them it was 9 million tulips. I said, because I misheard the farmer.
Yes.
I was in the fields in Norfolk. And the reason I needed to go as far as Norfolk, which is the east of England, is because I needed no trees, because Aussian trees are circular. So I needed a landscape that had giant skies and faced really the sea. So the landscape was endless. And so we went up to Norfolk, and I thought the farmer said, we need 1 million bulbs, but he actually said 9 million. And so, and I said, well, how much are the bulbs? And he says, well, I got to get them from Holland, and I need to get them quickly and get them in the ground before the ground freezes. I mean, my location manager, Adam, had found this wonderful farmer, Mark Eves, found the locations to do it, had set it all up. So then my task was to go in front of the meeting room and say, and I thought, well, here we're going to plant a flag in the sand of practical filmmaking.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to grow tulips. I'm going to grow 1 million tulips.
Not 1 million.
And and they were very against it, saying, we just want to do that in CGI, and we're going to need a backlot because the dancers. I said, yes, but we need tulips. We've got plenty of other scenes that require fields of tulips. And also, it's one of the great themes of Wicked, all the colors of the rainbow.
Right.
So
it is, in fact,
story themes here.
The rainbow, right?
Yeah. So it's theme driven. I knew I could do it. And I remember sitting in that room thinking, with my location manager, thinking, none of you have to do this. It's just me and him and the farmer. It's on us, And it wasn't a ton of money. We just had to buy the bulbs and get them in the ground. It's like, but getting that check written for Mark was painful. And of course, once they realized what we were doing and then publicity got involved, they come, because they behind the scenes would come and interview us and the farmer in winter, checking on the bulbs. We'd go up there, and once this sort of momentum came, everyone started to realize what a fantastic story this is. Mm-hmm. That we're growing colorful tulips for Wicked, all the colors of the rainbow. It became much bigger than any of us expected. And it was in fact 9 million. And I had to go back and say, actually, we bought 9 million. Yeah. And then Mark eventually told me, the farmer said, well, I actually ordered 12. And, but only 9 showed up. But we were with him. We planted them together. And then it grew. This story grew.
Yeah.
That they're growing tulips, 9 million tulips in Norfolk for the film. And even though, we figured out a way of still managing to, because we grew all those tulips in the film, we did plenty of scenes up there. But the main backlot where Munchkinland was actually our theory, or it was really John Chu came up with this idea. He said, let's sink the village into the field. So when we're running towards it, we only see the rooftops, and we can put those in digitally.
Mhm.
And then on the back lot, we build these ginormous berms, which act as backings.
Yeah.
And then we grew another 600,000 tulips in greenhouses near the back lot, so we could then plant the embankments with tulips. So together, I guess that's how filmmaking is, isn't it? It's like together you figure out how to create the best image.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, the effects have to stitch it all together.
Yeah.
And so everyone's involved. And I think that's where I come from, is just the balance of every department.
Yeah.
And ultimately that leads to the audience not seeing the falseness, you know? So
Yeah. It's the joy of collaboration, and something that I really firmly believe is that, as a production designer, you are a true thought partner in filmmaking and story, not just in creating beautiful sets, And I think in this case, you really inspired the whole team to get excited about the work you're doing. But there's a couple layers I want to unpack here, and one of them is it's about context, and by that I mean that the performance is one thing, but if the actors are not living in a space that is naturally providing a layer of context for them to live truthfully in their character, then you've done a disservice. In this case, was it you who came up with the idea of figuring out what it is that the Munchkins are even farming, right? What are they harvesting?
yeah.
So could you speak to kind of how you arrived at this idea that actually the tulips play an essential part in the livelihood of the Munchkins?
Exactly. Exactly. Because the problem when we started designing Munchkinland, and I say me and my wife were sitting in Brooklyn and with the chalkboard saying, what does Munchkin? It can't be a Swiss village. It can't be the Hobbit land. There's so many holes to fall into.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh God, like, what is it? Like, what are we going to do? Like, what, and then we sort of backed off. And with the help of the set decorator, Lee Sandels, was saying, well, what do they do? Like,
Right.
what are they doing? And it's like, okay, they're farmers. We know the Munchkin land is kind of farmland, or we're going to say it's farmland, because you have Winky Cat country, you have Gillikin in the north, which is shiz and it's more industrial, just from the books, and then of course all the west you have belongs to, eventually the Wicked Witch of the West has to take her persona. Elphaba has to eventually go west, and you really have to leave Gillikin alone because it belongs to her. And she goes as far west and has the story realization that she has to become the villain that Oz needs, So then we go back to, because we shot the film side by side, so you have to play all the stories of Wicked together as one. So you can back across an enormous script, really, two scripts. And then, so we start with Munchkinland. It's like, great, what do they do? They're farmers. What do they farm? They're colorful people. John wanted them to be colorful and joyous.
Yeah.
Because in story 2, that joy gets taken away by the Wicked Witch of the East, so there's sort of story development here. So one of them is joyous possible. It's like, we need color. And so if each house represented maybe a different color, okay, that's a starting point for architecture. And why does it a different color? It's like, well, we need to grow something that gives us different colors because they make the dye for the cloth, and then that goes to market, and we give them an industry. And of course, well, we need colorful flowers, and it's like tulips, all the colors, and then that feeds back into all the colors of the rainbow. So there's one house that deals with, blue tulips, one house that deals with yellow tulips. Well, not yellow, because that's the second film, but white tulips. So they have the dye for the cloth, or red tulips. And so we sort of came up with this, and then once we found the architecture, which took a long time, because we'd go down the road and say, nah, seen that, throw it away. It looks too much like this or that. And once we found the architecture, and then I knew we were going to do thatch because it just felt right. But then the color of thatch is dull. So it's like, well, let's put the flowers on the roofs, and you learn things. I spent a lot of time with Mark Eves, the farmer, who said, we don't plant tulips in farms to harvest the tulips. we are growing the bulb. So we chop all the heads off the tulips, part through growing, and then all that energy goes into the bulb. We get a bigger bulb. We put it in the greenhouse, and we get a much better flower. So it's a 2-3 year process. And so he said, well, what happens to all the flower heads? And he said, well, that's why you have tulip festivals, because they cut all the hair, and that's why you get tulip festivals. So it's like, okay, great. We can push that into Munchkinland. So I guess what I'm saying, if we hadn't gone down the road of doing something practically, it wouldn't have informed the way the set looked.
Right.
And I think you learn something. It's a journey. And since then I've called it the sort of the missing journey of art direction. Like, you have a concept, a model, an idea of what this place looks like, and it's all flushed out, and the art department's done everything it can. But if you don't build that set, if you don't build it or add the tulips to it, you don't have that 12 weeks of developing it and sculpting it. That's the art direction period, where you have your art directors in the field and you start learning things, and that input comes back to the story and the design, and it changes it. And if you have the right construction crew who understand that change is important, and it's also fun. If you get them involved, it's like, no. That allows you to develop the DNA of that design. And so everyone looking at it, everyone coming in, every art director knows, no, that's not Munchkin. That doesn't belong there. That's Gillikin. Right. You can't have that in here.
Yeah.
So I think we've missed, and really that goes full circle to where I started, where that art direction period, with Hook's ship, and you develop something, you learn something, you change, and it becomes much more of a sort of installation than a set that has grown.
Yeah,
and it's grown through the members of your crew, and in a weird way, it also involves them, and they have ownership of it, and it's important to them, and and it's something that until I started doing these sort of musicals, I sort of forgotten about the need to be one with your crew. And you need to get out there and talk to the farmer and learn. You know what I mean? It's fun. Like, I learned about how to be a tulip farmer. When am I ever going to do that in my life?
I think it's amazing, and it's really inspiring too to hear, the kind of the deeper level of it, right? Which is, it's not just planting something; it's actually planting the seed of inspiration that's going to keep everybody moving forward towards that goal. I was talking about you to Rick Carter the other day, and Rick was singing your praises about the beautiful work you've done on Wicked. And in particular, we talked about kind of nature and how you really lean into nature in a way that's really exciting. And looking at your past work too, with Interstellar, with the corn, and the glaciers, and kind of like letting nature and the earth itself play a role in your art department. And I think you shared a story once, and you'll have to kind of correct me if I'm misremembering, but that it was kind of the storm during Interstellar that kept you all locked inside the hotel when you finally figured out the Tesseract. And to me, there's something cosmic in this, which is that you allow nature and you trust nature to kind of guide things in a way, right? And it's this risk you take, but I think it pays off in some really amazing ways.
I mean, I totally agree. I think there's a sort of secondary element of that, and is allowing yourself time by parking something. The thing about we all know about film, especially if you're the art department, everyone wants to know what something's going to look like or what it's going to be and how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's this need, like you have a magic wand. Like, oh yeah, of course. Let me get my box of tricks out. Of course, it's going to be 2A plus 2B, like you have some formula, like it's physics.
Yeah.
It's math. It doesn't work like math. there's no right or wrong answer. So I think and this is about getting older, and Ricardo will understand this, is like, you just park something, understanding that the nature of humanity and the way your brain works, your body, because your gut gives you instinct, that you'll find it, and you just have to park it. And everyone wants the answer, but you can't give it to them because you're going to give them the wrong answer. And so you just park it. I always like nature. I mean, because, it helps me. Like with Wicked, I had to and this is my theory, underlying theory of how I could get into the design of the whole of Oz, because it was a mammoth task. I was thinking, well, the Grimmery from Wicked is so old, no one can read it, so it belongs to the time of the land. I'm going to say that belongs to the land, and then I'm going to say Shiz is the time of harmony, the Middle Ages, not the ancient lands where no one really understands the Grimmery anymore. So the time of harmony is Shiz, when everyone lived together in harmony, and the Emerald Sea is the time of the wizards, which is the future. Well, it's the future in the present day. And so I could relate it to anything to do with the Grimmery, or as old as it, like Kiamiko, because it's an ancient castle that eventually becomes the Wicked Witch of the West. Could live in the time of the land. It's forgotten, it's abandoned. And then Shiz, that allowed me to design Shiz because it was a time of harmony, and therefore all architectural forms joined, so I could find a way. And then Emerald City was authoritarian, with the wizard imposing himself on the land and pushing out with the Yellow Brick Road, which you'll see in film 2. The Yellow Brick Road is a symbol of his oppression. It's not it's not what we expect it to be. It's not what Dorothy's journey is on, because she is actually working for the wizard, unknowingly, unwittingly becoming the wizard's agent. And that's film 2. So we have to sort of set up the idea of the Yellow Brick Road in the wizard's chamber, and with that fantastic model that he's built. And we have to sort of semi-explain it. So there's all these themes going on, and to make things practically, and I'll go back to this, to build that model in that egg shape for the show that opens and changes, is all practical. The reason I like to make those things practically is because I can sort of feel out all the story points within it, and we can manufacture it, and we can learn from it and say, oh no, what if we did this? Let's change that. And it's again that art direction period. If I do it practically, and this goes back to like parking something, is I'll find it through that period, even though I'm going in pretending I know what it is, but I don't. And so I'll know it by the end. And it's like the wizard's head, the mechanical head. This goes back to the actors. Like, I have to put them. What's the most amazing moment in the Wizard of Oz is when the head comes out and goes, "I am Oz," and it's an intimidation chamber. So it's like, what's the modern version of that, and how can I do it, and how can I surprise, Ariana and Cynthia so much that they're so almost surprised, frightened, and then so impressed with the wizard they buy into his illusionist techniques. And I used to love that wizard's head. I'd sit and watch the puppeteers do it all day long.
I can imagine. I hope you had a chance to puppeteer it yourself a little bit. Just because I know that there was a huge amount of surprise and delight for the cast of this film, walking onto these sets, seeing some of these kind of wonderful things that you created. Tell us what it was like when the actors first saw the Oz head.
It was brilliant. I'm not quite sure they realized what was going to happen. I mean, the word had got out that they built an Oz head, and it's all hydraulic. I mean, this is with enormous help from special effects, Paul Corbell and his engineering team. I'll try and give you the physics. So we made a little maquette with a puppeteer, one of the special effects puppeteers, Chris, who would he'd animate all the parts and the cheekbones, and so we could at least figure out if we could get surprise and all those movements. or how many pieces we needed. And that was it was a 12th scale model, and we sort of showed it to John, and John was excited. But then special effects had to build this giant hydraulic arm that attached to the ceiling of the stage that could push the head through. I need to go back a bit. I was thinking, I don't want a curtain, like a theater curtain, and the head comes out. We were thinking, like, what if it was more mysterious and it was all made of velvet strings or big ropes and, big sort of baubles of materials. And, it looked like something like from, a Bohemian palace or something. You know what I mean? I had like these strings, and if we could make that 12 foot deep and push the head through, you see movement, almost like the wind of the curtain, which is a sort of Indiana Jones thing, isn't it? So and then the curtains would slowly separate, and you get like an eye from the puppet, like, and he's like, I'm Oz. And so we spent weeks with the drapery department hanging bits of curtain, and like, what can we do? That's it involves everyone. So we had special effects building the hydraulics, we had the puppeteer department figuring out how many pieces we need and all those hydraulics that special effects ran. And then we had my art directors trying to figure out all the pieces and how to manufacture them. And then the paint department, the scenics, figuring out what color they are. Because you've got all this darkness and green, and you don't want it to be, you want it to feel old, and you need it to feel like it belongs at least in the 30s. So that's how we ended up with burl wood. It's quarter cut burl wood. It's part of that language of that architecture.
Yeah.
And old walls of deco. So I'm skipping a little bit, but you have all the, so it's organic. It forms organically, and everyone's working differently in different places. Like, we're hanging the curtain on a stage we borrowed over Elstree to try and then I got my art directors with a big cardboard cutout out of the head trying to push it through to see what it's going to look like. We got the mechanical guys in the shop trying to fix it. And then it all suddenly comes together on stage. And then, so when we first pushed it through, and you have special effects a little wires, because I needed to get some of the string out of the way because it didn't catch on the hydraulics. And so when we pushed it through, they literally jumped out there. Out of their skins. They were like, whoa.
That's fantastic.
And they were like, and we had to cut. It was like, they were like, I know Ariana was still going, oh my God. So, I mean, there's joy in that moment, because you put them in the wizard's chamber, and Jeff Goldblum comes out and say, oh, it's you. I didn't mean to scare you. So and he's tap dancing.
A great day at work.
Yeah.
In the throne room, the map room really stands out to me as actually one of my favorite moments of the film, because of its sort of theatrical simplicity, going back to the roots of, like, Charlie Chaplin films, like thinking, of course, The Great Dictator and moments like that, the little dance behind the scrim.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was such a delightful moment, and kind of really speaks to certainly the power of doing things practically, but also how the simplest little things can actually be sometimes the most wonderful, marvelous moments of a film. So in the case of Wicked in particular, with its roots in musical theater and live theater, I thought that was also kind of a nice little love letter to those that are coming to this film from the love of the musical.
Well, I guess it started with myself and John looking, so we can't just put a map on the wall, with lit colors for different, different colored brick roads. And so it started there, and it was like, what if we forced it? And that comes from spending Sundays on Dunkirk with nothing to do. So I used to go to the art museum, and there were these sort of forced perspectives of the boatyards that used to exist, in the 1700s. So there were these beautiful little vignette-y forced perspectives. So it's like, well, maybe we could do something like that. And John, what I love about John Chu is you come to him with an idea, and then he sort of pushes it as even further, and like which is fantastic because then it becomes something more than it should be. And so he's very good at pushing me beyond sort of what I, in a weird way, sort of being honest, like what I feel is possible. It's like, no, we're going to go a bit further. So it's magical.
Yeah.
And I believe lots of things are possible, but it's nice that John pushes even further. And so we started with this, okay, what if it was an egg shape? So we spent a lot of time with Unreal Engine illustrators, like trying to push that into 3D and how we could force it, because that means there's a map of every single place, depending on where it sat in the egg, had to be a different scale.
Right.
So, and eventually going to the horizon point, which is where the sky took over the top of the egg. So I knew I needed an egg. So I went to construction when we drew it, and they said, build us the egg and we'll figure out the rest as we go. And then we got a miniature team run by one of my art directors he's specifically good at that stuff, Chris. And he started to try and figure out the placement and scale of each building. And, a lot of it is trial and error, especially with an egg-shaped forced perspective. Everything's changing and moving. So in a lot of ways, you need to cut it out of cardboard full size and place it and scale it to eye. And it's like there's some math, but it's really, you need to do it by eye. So that all went in, and then we think, okay, we've got to get Yellow Brick Road, we've got to get the lighting department involved, so we lighted different LED colors. And then my scenic painter, David, who's freaking good, painted this sky in the egg. It was a hard egg, and it went down to the horizon beautifully. The clouds, the little clouds. He's standing there looking and painting it as he goes.
Mm-hmm.
So all those elements were in, and then John said, I need to make more. I want the wizard to step into the map and being sentimental man. And that means they say, okay, we're going to step into the map. And then he says, any way we can go from day to night? It's like, well, we could hydraulically lift the top of the egg and have a painted scrim behind it. And really that was David, the scenic, saying, okay, can you paint a scrim, and can we do a lighting effect change with the DP? Like, everyone's involved.
Yeah.
Good. Very positive. It's like, okay, we can special effects. Can we hydraulically lift that egg slowly during the number so it becomes this sort of overwhelming sort of chorus almost? So it's like, the music streams with this thing lifting, and then we slowly turn on the lights to the backing, which is a night sky, and we have to take down the lights on the map. And then John said, but I want him to go through the backing. So it's like, we're going to put a hole in it. And then it's like, okay, now we're involving visual effects because we've got to fix that hole. Yeah. So, so everyone gets involved in something quite physical, but they're all involved. So that's why, you have to be very inclusive. It didn't just take one department. It's just not our department. It's 8 departments,
Absolutely.
And then John said, we should get a little balloon of the world and the moon. And he's like bumping it like Charlie Chaplin. And then eventually he floats down like this, which is Jeff Goldblum, at his best. And that thing influenced him to do the best bit at the end.
That's so cool.
So it becomes thing. And I think that's the joy of it, isn't it?
I wanted to ask you about resources. I know even on a film at the scale of Wicked, of course, there's still never enough time and money, right? I mean, it just grows with the film. So, what happens when you're on a film like Wicked and you're reaching a point where you're about to cap your budget? How do you creatively make sure you can get the most out of every set? In a creative way? I know in Emerald City that meant a little bit of kind of reusing, right? So maybe you could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, we had 3 John backlots. We had Munchkinland, and then we had Shiz, which was very complex with its water tanks. And then we had Emerald City. And Emerald City was last. We moved up. We had about 27 acres. We had the train and a field for the train and the train station. So we had about 27 acres, and so we slowly built Munchkinland, then Shiz, and then we ended up at Emerald City. And my construction manager, Paul Hayes and Mark Seath, came to me and said, we spent too much on shiz. It was too complicated with the tanks. And we only have the big Emerald City left. And that's the only, we have this amount of money left for Emerald City. It was like, oh no. It's like, it's our most important set because it plays significantly in the second film. So we're building to the second film.
Yeah.
And because we'd shot when we started in winter, so we started with all the interior Emerald City sets, like the Great Hall, the throne room. There were many sets that we'd started with, and the control room, which is film 2. We'd sort of developed this language of Emerald City architecture, and in a weird way, that language saved me because I always saw the Emerald City as feeling like the White City of Chicago in the 1903 Walls exhibition.
It's kind of the very American part of this whole affair, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's an American fairy tale. So I always thought the White City is the dream, is the American dream that Emerald City is. It's not the same architecture, but it's the same thought process. But within that, the White City, people like Louis Sullivan and Bernard Monroe had worked, and they developed this sort of variation on Beaux Arts, Grand Palais French style that belonged in a much harder, that eventually became the prairie style. So I knew if I created a repeatable tile with a pattern that belonged to Oz, that was not just a copy of a Sullivan tile, but it had, Nabatean influences, crow's feet, and it belonged to Oz. And then we'd made 6 of them, and we cast thousands of them. We could fill any wall with dimension. And to me, with backlots, I know from the past, if I end up with a flat wall because I've run out of money and I just have to paint it green, the set is dead because we're going to see a lot of it. It doesn't matter the wide. You're shooting people up close. It's all got to be interesting.
It's all about
so I knew that
shadow and reflection, right?
Yeah, and when you scrape it and exactly shadow, that tile had a bit of Carlo Scarpa in it. So I sort of drew on a lot of architecture. And anyway, so my construction team were like, okay, I said to them, like, let's get everything we built for the Emerald City into the field where we're going to build the Emerald City. Everything from the interior sets, including the big columns, every single tile we made, because we didn't want a flat wall. Let's lay it all out on the grass and the whole thing. And then our director out there had a poor cam and is like, we roughly know the shape we want this set to be. And it was like, let's place the parts we have that we love and then figure out how we join them all together.
Yeah.
We had a train station interior because the Emerald City was supposed to come to a train station interior. And then we get out and go into the Emerald City, which was a complete waste of money building a train station for 10 seconds, so an interior train station. So I went to John and say, can we just drive the Emerald City Express into the city? Because it was like, then I have one wall, the back wall.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason the train comes in to the staircase that goes out. And of course, it's a nod, that archway around the train. So the train's up at 12 foot and it's 40 tons. So we had to get it up there on track, and it's 12 foot off the ground. But then the arch, the higher I could get it, it would fill the arch because it was a magnificent clockwork train. And then the arch, of course, I kind of nodded my hat to Louis Sullivan because he designed the transportation building of the White City. So, and those arches that he did don't finish at the center point. They go a bit further and they become kind of Americana. And so that is so I had all these facades and then we stood everything and we linked everything with those tiles. We had made 6,000 tiles to link everything, the textural tiles. And then I broke it up with archways because I always break things up with archways. So it makes the set feel bigger. So the first part to the second part, you're looking through an arch to the second part of the set, which makes you can't see the edges. So it pushes the back wall away and makes you feel it's a bigger set than it is. And then vice versa. And then I squeezed it into a natural giant perspective to transportation building, so it felt longer than it was. So there's so many tricks from that I certainly didn't invent. So, but we got there and we spent I think we gave them back about $100 at the end of the film, but we did come in under budget.
There you go. You could take them all out for a coffee, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But I always remember my construction team saying, we don't go over budget. So it's like, okay, we got to figure it out. And then I stole money from the governor's mansion to put into Emerald City by reusing some shiz sets and refinish them. We have to start being clever. That doesn't mean we have to lose the design. We already know what the design is. We have to find a way. It actually forced us into the language of the White City because we had to make tiles. It actually made us not over decorate it, because there's a modernism to Emerald City. And even though those tiles are incredibly decorative and Oz is quite fanciful, it still belongs in that modernist format. And I think I'm quite proud of that, because I grew up watching The Wizard of Oz, and I always wanted to go in the back. I want to go to the Emerald City.
Absolutely.
I finally got to go.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that so much. And I think, there's something, there is something that the secret, I think, of production design is sometimes it's really great to pull back, or
Yeah.
to take something away, or to simplify something to arrive at the most poetic and truthful environment that you can possibly imagine,
Yeah. But you have this is instinct. I think by the time you get to that point of the film, you have an instinct for the language of the architecture. So you have to listen to that. And you mustn't panic and just do something because you need to finish it.
It's really important as a production designer to have massive optimism, in order to keep the train moving forward. So, how do you inspire your team of however many people it is, between your art directors, your set designers, graphics, props, your craftspeople? How do you inspire that team to keep that sense of massive optimism, and maybe even how do you build that to begin with and keep that going throughout production?
Well, I think in the art department, you need to spend time with everyone, from the PAs through the junior drafts people, to the art director. You just need to spend time with them and discuss stuff with them. Like, you got to get to know them, and I need to sit with them. I need to know their strengths. So you put them on the right thing, because it's like, oh, you're really good at that. You're doing the wrong thing. You should be doing that. And it's not an insult that they can't do that thing. It's like, it's a really positive thing. And I think being positive is, you don't want negativity in the art department. So, and I think it's about spending time. It's difficult as a designer because we have to deal with an enormous amount of politics. And so it's very exhausting to come out of that and come back into the art department and have the energy to go around. But if you can instill a sense of friendliness, and the fact that you're open to ideas, and be brave enough to tell someone that is a bad idea. So, or for you, I think you need to spend time with them and just be decent to people, because it's very easy. It's like construction. Get them a coffee van and pay them properly, and they'll work for you all day long. And then go and put on your wellies and stand with them and spend some time with them. Go to the shops. You just need to spend time with every member of your team. And you need to somehow instill that you're open. It's like, well, you try it. Even if they're going to go down a dead end, you have to allow them to do that.
Right.
And sometimes they, a lot of those people are better at shit than me. Sorry, I'm not allowed to say that word. But they can work. I mean, when you find a phenomenal art director who can actually physically work something out brilliantly, with design, but also you need to team people together because someone might be mechanically brilliant, but they need a little bit of femininity in their design or something. You have to team, or romanticism, or it's too hard edge. You need to team people together. That you have to cast your art department.
Yeah.
So, like I have my key people sit outside my office in their areas because I need to work from that inner core that when we spread out, it's usually a design core because I can't do it alone. And then we spread out and then involve more and more people. And I mean, I need to make my art department a completely safe zone and a great place for me to return to, so I can because you're out there and it's like the bad side of production design is you have to struggle and sweat and fight for everything you want to do, and sometimes you lose. So it's and it's like and so you need to make sure you don't have a hostile place to go to.
Yeah. Well, I'm sensitive to the time. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and we could go on forever and ever. But as sort of a closing reflection, I'm curious, how do you stay inspired? What is it that you do, in your daily life to just keep that spark of wonder alive in your life?
Well, I work with my wife, Phyllis, and we have a big blackboard downstairs. And when we get ideas, we just chalk them out. And you kind of need someone to bounce ideas off. And so you kind of like, well, what if this? What if we did this? We sit down there thinking, well, say we wanted to do an extension. What would that look like? Not that we're going to do an extension. You just sort of discuss. I'm very lucky to have someone who is great design inspiration. And that's how you say. And also in careers, you have to give up something to challenge yourself to go further. If you get into a sort of place where you are like not challenged anymore, then you have to change, and that's a very hard. As you get older, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, and it can actually it's certainly worrying. It's like, what have I done? Because everyone, we all need to work, and there are all these other things in life, but somehow you have to make sure you're going to be happy along the way. So, and
is it even worth doing if it's not frightening in some way, right?
Yeah, but life, there's different moments in life. So I feel like that I've had a lot of luck that something's arrived on my doorstep to wake me up. And that is definitely fortune, and I feel very lucky in that sense. So that goes with it too. But I mean, there's good and bad times in my career, but I wouldn't have missed a day of them. Because everything led to something else. So it was good.
That's great. On that note, Nathan, thank you so much for being here today. It's great chatting with you, and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, likewise.
And that brings us to the end of our conversation today. I'd like to take a moment to recognize my co-producer, Gavin Mosier, and the composer of our original score, Nathan Avakian. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for our next conversation in this ongoing odyssey into the world of film design. Until next time, be kind, stay creative, and thanks for listening.